Hi, it's Winton Churchill with the Barefoot Consultants, and Happy New Year. This is our first live since the new year, and I'd like to say Happy New Year to everybody on the line, and uh, appreciate all the good conversations we have over the holidays. We did a number of meetups over the holidays for freelancers, kind of a open Q&A sessions, and worked out very well. We had a lot of good participation, so thank you for that. Today we're going to talk about five things that every person, baby boomer, 50 plus person must know as we go about the online freelancing as we go into 2022. And certainly the pandemic has changed all our lives in many ways, and a lot of the changes that are coming out of rolling into freelancing are coming out of the needs that were generated during the pandemic and that sort of thing. So lots of good stuff to talk about there. So if you're new to this, you're welcome to make a comment as you come in. Let us know where you're coming in from. Also, we'd like to welcome all of our people listening to this on the playback. Most people do, in fact, listen to it on the playback, about 95%, and we monitor the comments in our Facebook page and YouTube and that kind of thing. This is all being broadcast to those places simultaneously. And as we get questions during the week, we'll answer those. So happy to answer any question you might have, but you're certainly welcome to have any question here. I'm happy to answer as well. I'm using a system called StreamYard, and it lets me, in theory, see questions that you type into the chat window. So feel free to type in there. So the first thing we're going to talk about is something that is a topic in the news called the Great Resignation. Probably hard to imagine you haven't heard about this, but it's when people go back to work now after the pandemic, and they're back in their office and they're doing their regular job for a week or two or 3 or 4 or 5, usually 1 to 2 months, and they just have an epiphany, I guess you would call it, and say, I'm over this. I'm not going to commute anymore. I'm not going to get dressed up anymore. I'm not going to put up with all the office gossip anymore. I'm not going to go to boring meetings that make no sense for me to go to anymore. I'm going to either work as an employee for the company that I work for now, or organization, lots of nonprofits, government organizations. People are all going through this. And if I can't work as an employee, I'm going to work as a freelancer. And so there are two sides to this to understand in the Great Resignation. There's the company side and the freelancer side, and I'm going to walk through both of those. And these are the first two things to understand as we go forward into 2022, because these are big changes. These are going to impact us all the way through 2022 and beyond, because the nature of work has really changed through this whole pandemic. It's not just, we got out of the office and now we're going back to the office. People's attitudes changed. When you sit at home for a year and a half or more, your thoughts about what am I doing here? Does this make sense? Is this what I like doing? Can I see a way to change it? All those thoughts come up. So let's look at this purely from the company side. And what's happening from the company side is that companies are losing employees that are participating in the Great Resignation. They say, I resign. So let's talk a little bit about what happens there. That employee has a job to do. They might be in marketing, they might be in programming, they might be in some other area. Good to see you, Marianne. Welcome. Thanks for stopping by. Um, and so that that person in that company that's leaving now has a job, and say 40, 50, 60% is based on their education, their skill set, what they've been doing over the last few years. But that job also had a fair amount of administrative activity in it. It had a fair amount of, uh, uh, you know, mentoring other people potentially. It had a fair amount of what I would call Microsoft Office work, creating presentations, maybe writing up reports, that kind of thing. And when that employee leaves, so does all that activity that they devoted to that. And everybody thinks that, well, they're a programmer. We don't have to worry if they leave. I mean, we have to replace the programmer. But no, they did all these other little administrative things and Microsoft Office things and that kind of stuff. And that is extremely fertile ground for uh, freelancers, especially in the 50 plus crowd, because that's not an inherent job skill to the person that's leaving. It's sort of a sidebar to their job, but it's a great opportunity for that manager in that company to go out and pick a freelancer. So first perspective, note to self is that major companies, major nonprofit organizations are suffering most from the Great Resignation, and major government organizations. And so those organizations are going to be increasingly turning to freelance people to do a lot of that work. You may not be a programmer, but your ability to write reports on progress in different areas or prepare presentations on different things exist. And if somebody that has that sort of core information, what we would call the content expert, when they work with you, you can develop wonderful presentations, wonderful analysis of using Excel or that kind of thing. And so this is an open door that really didn't exist, until about, I guess, this past summer in 2021. And it's increasingly becoming a problem. So something to pay attention to. The second side of the Great Resignation, and this is one that I haven't heard anybody talk about at all, is that you have all these people going from working in corporate America, working in government, working in nonprofits, saying, I can strike out on my own. I can have a life out there, as a freelancer. And they can, and it's true, but they don't yet understand freelancing at all. They don't know what it's like. They think, okay, I go out there, I charge an amount of money per hour, or I bid on fixed price jobs, which is what we recommend in most cases. And I do all this stuff, but they don't realize that, they have to now become a bookkeeper. They have to become an invoicer and billing expert. They have to comply with certain rules and regulations about freelancing and, what they're able to do and not do and where they can do it from and what they have to charge tax for and what they don't have to charge tax for. And all these sort of care and feeding of a freelancer come into play. And if the freelancer is coming from employment, they have little to no idea about what that's all about. And so that is the second side of that. So the ability to provide bookkeeping services to a new freelancer, one thing a new freelancer usually needs when they start a business, is they need a 5 to 10 page PowerPoint that describes what their business is, what it does. This is a PowerPoint that they typically use when they have a Zoom call with a potential new client, so they can communicate a significant volume of information in a relatively short period of time. So they need PowerPoints, they need graphic design, they might need a logo. There's all kinds of freelance work for that new freelancer. There are programmers that work online, and that's not our typical freelancer. But the ones that do work online many times make in excess of $100, 150, 200, 250 even. And so they can earn a lot more in an hour of programming than they can figuring out how to put together a PowerPoint presentation that describes their business. And in fact, many of the reasons that they may have gone into programming initially are because they're not very verbal. They don't like necessarily communicating to an audience or that kind of thing. But as a freelancer, you do wind up having to communicate with your client from time to time. Most of the communications that flow back and forth between clients are, um, you know, text, email, that kind of thing. But increasingly, with things like Zoom, clients are interested in forming that relationship. And in fact, you should be too, because it's when you're able to see somebody, to have a conversation with somebody, that you begin to build that relationship much more quickly, and they get a much better understanding of who you are. And so those are the first two. The next one is what I call accessing high powered talent. And the best story I know to describe this is when the web first came along. Most marketing departments had people that worked in the marketing department, and somewhere along the way, people started saying, we should really have a website. And the bigger the company you were, the quicker that came. And so many companies and many small businesses, even to this day, do not have websites, or they don't have a website that does anything for them. They may have a place out on the internet that says, here's how to drive to where we are, and here's what we do, but it's not really bringing in business. But in larger companies, what would happen is somebody would say, okay, who knows something about websites? And, in the marketing department, people say, well, gee, I don't know much about websites. I mean, I surf to a few of them, and my brother-in-law has a website, but I don't really know anything. So they would say, well, let's go over to the IT department. I mean, we have to put this up on a computer system of some kind, and let's go talk to them. And they would bring in somebody from IT, and somebody would say, that the IT person would say, sure, I've built several websites. I know exactly what to do. Well, what that IT person knew how to do is they knew how to put a website up on the internet, but tragically, they didn't have a clue of how to promote your products and services. And if you just put a website up, if it doesn't have somebody that has the skill of promotion, strategic marketing, languaging for copywriting, that kind of thing, the website will probably do nothing. And there were companies that were spending $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, and what they would wind up with is this sad-looking brochure on the internet. So, and this is particularly applicable to small businesses, because small businesses don't have the kinds of revenue to have a full-time website person necessarily. And so the idea of being able to go into a site like Upwork, Fiverr, freelancer.com, guru.com, and find somebody who understands the marketing side of building a website and understands the idea that a website is nice, but a website that brings in new clients, helps existing clients better understand what you do, is much more valuable than just a website. So if you extrapolate that to this idea that companies no longer have to take an employee that knows a little bit about something and throw them into the breach and get them to try to create this thing, they can actually pick and choose and go out and find an expert, not only in building a website, but in helping it market your products and services or whatever mission you're on. If you're a nonprofit, if you're, ending world hunger or whatever it might be, that is your, if you think about the cave drawings that cave people did early on, that was really the first version of the web, and it's interesting that in our humanness, there is this concept of people that want to just jump right in and start communicating in graphics and on a wall and that kind of thing. And we've been doing it for hundreds of thousands of years now, as it has recently come out. So being able to tap that person. So there's Christopher sailing in from the Hotel Del in his photograph. Many fond memories of the Hotel Del, and my buddy Steve Chiffo, that was the manager of the Hotel Del back in the 80s. Wonderful place to hide out and be inspired from. So that's great. And one of the best places to live is on Coronado Island, there in just off the coast of San Diego. And yes, actually, the Steve was very helpful in when I formed a company, a software development firm many years ago, and just really, got to know the Hotel Del and the secret rooms and the rooms that had ghosts and all that kind of stuff. So it was just quite a lot of fun. So yes, just across the bay from downtown San Diego. So cool place. All righty. Yeah, so that's a good idea, Steve. I'll just recap the four things. So the first four things we've talked about are the Great Resignation from the company side. This is creating new freelance opportunities. The Great Resignation from the freelancer side, and this is creating new opportunities for freelancers to do work for other freelancers, primarily because all the people going, taking part of the Great Resignation, there's a lot they don't know yet. They don't about running a business and complying with tax laws and accounting things and building presentations that showcase their business in PowerPoint and writing pages for their web that might encourage somebody to get there, to use that. And so, exactly, from both sides. So there's two big opportunities there. And then the next part is getting that flexible talent. Companies used to do what I would call battlefield promotions. They'd run along and they'd have somebody and say, "Hey, do you know anything about building websites for a company?" And the person say, "Well, I built one for my coin collecting group, so I know a little bit about it." But the whole idea of a website is to share the experience and the value that you bring to the world, whether you're a nonprofit organization or a business or that kind of thing. And so that's what we relied on, is somebody that may have some skills, but didn't really know what they were doing. And what this really focused on is, it was the jack of all trades that was the person. But now you don't need the jack of all trades. For a fraction of what you would spend having that employee kind of come up to speed on stuff and that kind of thing, you could go out on it to one of these networks, Upwork, Fiverr, freelancer.com, guru.com, and find somebody that's an expert in that for a fraction of the money, get something built, and something that most importantly is effective. And that's a great way to handle that. And yes, Jill of all trades. That's yeah, very good. Uh, yeah. And so the next ones we're going to cover have to do with mindset, number 4, and number 5, just sort of a big picture landscape. What just happened? We're still coming out of this pandemic, and I'm sure that we still don't know what just happened, in the sense of lots of stuff is going on that we're still processing, that we're still understanding, and it will change the way we live going forward forever. And it's something that we'll all get used to. But the first thing, which is item number 4 on my list, is more people, millions more people, maybe billions more people, understand the idea of working remotely. And this is so important. Much of the resistance to using freelancers in the world had to do with the persistent negative thought that managers and business owners and uh, people that hired people had. HR departments, for example, also had this. They had the conception that people couldn't work remotely. And now, yeah, like Christopher is saying here, it's now a logical and safe choice. Not that everybody's doing it well. I talk to people every day, freelancers that get hired by companies that don't know how to work with a freelancer, for example. And so there's lots of different things to consider around that. But now there were many studies going on. If you Google studies about work from home productivity, you'll see dozens of studies that point to this idea that people got more work done when they were at home, because they didn't have to get up and put on their business attire every day. That takes a certain amount of time. They didn't have to commute every day. They didn't have to find a parking space every day. They didn't have to sit in boring and unnecessary meetings every day. It was a little bit easier to avoid that. They didn't have to put up with the negativity that you might see in the in the office in general. Always the office gossip and that kind of thing. And so they were able to work at home. They didn't have to think more about, what am I going to do for lunch? I know one large office building I worked in, that was always, on email about 11:15 people. Should we go here? Should we go there? Is anybody up for going to this place? And all this stuff is just a time sink in, in the life of an employee working in an office building. And so lots of in the commute, the average commute in the United States across all commutes prior to the pandemic was about a half hour. And I know, living in Los Angeles and Southern California for many years, that where I had to commute, it was frequently an hour each way. And so, yeah, that will take a lot out of your productivity. And fighting traffic and that kind of thing. In some cases you could come home relaxed. Once I got into books on tape very early, and so I was listening to a book for most of my commute of one kind or another, and that was very relaxing, but not uh you know not the kind of thing that before I learned how to do books on tape, you came home just tense from all the people that cut you off and all the bad drivers and all those kind of things. And yes, as Christopher mentions, it was very, it was unplanned. Some days, and this is not today, but some days in LA and, over the last 30 years, there used to be, you knew you had to leave by a certain time, and then you'd have a speedy commute, And if you left later than that, it would be a longer commute. And now it's just traffic all the time from my friends that live there. And so the uh, next thing that I wanted to talk about, yeah, a little bit of snow and ice, which they've had over the last few days up in that area, just creates havoc on the roads. And again, people are driving like like they normally want to drive, and don't make any allowance for that. And of course, that creates accidents and all that kind of stuff. So let's take a look at the fifth factor. This is, man, this ship sailed. Uh, People are, living in the past, driving by looking at their rearview mirror when they're thinking that the office is going to go back to what it was, that the office is going to be the place where hundreds to thousand people all go crowd into a building. And, glad I'm not in the business of commercial real estate, because that world is really going through an upheaval. I mean, I just saw a video this morning on YouTube of a store owner that had an office, a retail store in a very popular area of Manhattan, and his rent was $10,000 a month. And he said everybody that had a store in that street was happy to pay $10,000 a month rent, because the foot traffic was was resulting in business way in excess of that, and it was a great place to be and a wonderful time and that kind of thing. But now there's no foot traffic because people aren't going to the places they were going to. They aren't going to their office buildings and all that kind of stuff. And so if you, as an employee, let's say you're an employee right now, if you're counting on working in an office over the next decade, I think you can scratch that off your list. Massive companies are still fumbling with this. I just talked with somebody yesterday who's an executive in a major financial institution. They had plans to come back into the office in October and November. And then in December, they said, we don't know what we're going to do. And, all through all this, they have been refining the ability for their employees to work from home. And now that the great resignation has faced everybody, and people realize what a dehumanizing place the office can be, and how unproductive an office can be, the management and the employees are all in agreement that there has to be something better than this. And if that is one theme from where we're going from the old paradigm of going to an office and working, we now know not only does there have to be something better than this, billions of people have proved this around the world, that there is something better than this. And we're moving towards that and away from what we used to do. Now, one of the things that one of the people that I learned a lot of stuff from was this guy named Mike Vance, and he was the HR guy at Disney and responsible for training, and he went on to Apple when I was there, and he's wonderfully inspirational about this. This is not sad. This is not something to be, oh my God, we're never going to have the office again. We're never going to have the salaries again. We're never going to have the perks again. No, this is an opportunity for a whole rebirth. And I compare the period that we're in right now with a pandemic, I think, with the Omicron virus and everything, symptoms much lighter, hospitalizations drastically reduced by 75%. Lots of good things happening there. that this is going to be the next period we're going through is going to be like the period after World War II. And, many of us are part of that. It's called the baby boom. And it wasn't just the baby boom, it was the baby boomers. And all kind of innovations came out. I mean, if you look after World War II, we got things like a lot of people got married because after they'd gone through the war, they learned to appreciate how valuable those family relationships were and how time is moving by, and so lots of people got married. They developed the uh, 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 the home manufacturing. Basically, I grew up in a little area named Key Biscayne in Florida, and the Mackle brothers developed these project houses. They were 3 bedroom, 1 bath for the most part. At that point, Key Biscayne looked like a coral reef. So you see all these pitiful houses built out there, and they might have one palm tree that had been transplanted into the yard, but everything else was sand and gravel is kind of how it looked initially. But very quickly, it took on a much nicer look to what it was today. And the idea of the explosion of worldwide economies and worldwide innovation and the automobile and interstate highways and air transportation and all these things really exploded right after this period of time, World War II. And I think that's certainly what we've just been through with the pandemic, and are still going through in some cases, uh, is going to create that same kind of boomerang effect that the world is going to go sailing off into an era of new prosperity, new innovation. We're going to understand there's been tons of science created around this virus. And I read an article recently that talked about all the innovations and discoveries that have been made over the period of the virus that, while not specifically related to vaccines or that kind of thing, have just created whole new paradigms in understanding of medicine and different tools for surgery and all kinds of things. And it's been quite a period of new understandings. And so now we're going to be facing a time when the next few years certainly is taking all those innovations, taking all those breakthroughs, taking all those insights and rolling them into products and services that we're all going to benefit from. And people looking at let's take advantage of of what's coming. And certainly one interesting article I read recently talked about the idea of travel, that travel is expected to explode. We all realized and maybe got a little blasé around travel, is that, oh, I can jump on a plane anytime. I can run over to DFW airport, and in 3 hours I'll be on a beach in Mexico, and people now, prior to the pandemic, were doing that sort of thing and going to fabulous destinations just like they would do in generations earlier on going to the beach or that kind of thing. Well, now it's very convenient. And the other aspect of this, there's some downsides to not working in an office. Every day your scenery changed when you were working in an office, and you had interaction with other people. And one of the downsides to sitting at your desk in your home, in your spare bedroom, or in your den, or wherever it is that the scenery stays the same. And one of the famous sayings that I like is that if let's see, I'm trying to think of how exactly how this goes. If you're not the lead dog you've seen those, uh, Christopher, help me here. What do they call those, that Iditarod dog race? If you're up in Alaska and you've got a team of dogs and you've got typically 9 dogs in the team, and there's a lead dog, and then all the other dogs are kind of behind the lead dog. And the saying has something to do with, if you're not the lead dog, the scenery doesn't change very much. You're jumping along looking at the rear end of another dog basically for most of your days. And that kind of thing can happen to a freelancer. And you want to get out, and you just don't want to go to the seashore. You want to go to the most beautiful seashore in the world, and you want to relax and you want to unwind. So the thought is that business travel is going to go way down, because we've all learned, I could spend the next 3 days across time zones and dehydrated in an airplane and maybe exposed to different viruses of one kind or another, and spend $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 as a business person, versus getting on a Zoom call, even if it's 2 or 3 Zoom calls for an hour, and accomplish 95% of the same thing. Which choice am I going to make? So the basis or the prognostication for business travel is way down. But the prognostication for leisure travel is way up. And so the thought is, we're right at that point. I think, I hope, you hope, we all hope that the pandemic is winding down, that this is the end. This is the whimper on the way out the door. And we're going to have a whole new set of options to take advantage of like never before. And yeah, Christopher, help me out. The lead dog. Yes. You want to be the lead dog, or nothing at all. And we're all going to want to get out and get that beach. And Marianne has a very good comment, is that by living on Zoom and Facebook, it helps break up the scenery. And this is very important. And doing things like online yoga class. In my own situation here, where I was on a business trip to Dallas, and as I was stepping off the plane, I got a text that said, "We're locking down tomorrow." And I thought that after my 2-week business trip, I would be back at my home in Mexico, where I've lived for 15 years, have everything dialed in. And now I was scrambling to find, where can I sleep? And scrambling in a pandemic, when they're saying, don't go out, don't talk to people, don't touch doorknobs, all this kind of stuff. Wash your hands 25 times a day. And yes, it's it's that shift of having to completely reimagine how you put your life together. And when it first started, it was like, oh yeah, 30 days to stop the spread. I can do that. I can just extend my Airbnb thing. And that worked out great. And then I thought I'd be on the next plane back to Mexico early on. And then, it was 30 more days. And then it was another 30 days. And then I realized this isn't going away in a hurry. And I went out and made more permanent arrangements and had to rent a place. And every piece of furniture and every morsel of food came through Amazon and other places that I ordered online. And, we learned all about, no touch drop-offs and that kind of thing. And it is amazing. They say that when, let's see, what is it? When the master appears when the student is ready, is one variation of that. And yes, if we had not had Facebook and not had Zoom to break up this monotony, it would have been different. But for me, in my case, and I know for many of the people that we work with on a regular basis, that yeah, my day is kind of the same. I mean, I get up, I have appointments, I talk to people, we talk a little, we laugh a little, stuff is fun, and then at the end of the day, when I turn off all the lights that uh, you know are shining on my face, so I look good on Zoom, and my camera and my laptop and everything, and I walk into the next room and I realize, oh my God, I'm in Texas. I'm not in Mexico. It's a little bit of a shock sometimes because you are so connected through these different systems. Let's see. Yeah, and Christopher says, my father-in-law in Durango says that warnings are going up there. Yes, and I just saw an article, this morning that says that the infection rate has never been higher from the virus than it is today. In the entire period of the pandemic, it is as its peak. And of course, that's the news media. And so that scares everybody. The part of the story they're not telling you is the symptoms of this mutated virus are smaller than they've ever been. And the hospitalization rate is down by 75%. And, one person I talked to said this may be the vaccination for all of us. Everybody's immune, and there are even some studies out that show you have broader immunity if you catch it now in its current form. So what looks like something very bad and very conflicting is actually something very good, and it's something that's going to be great for all of us. And Christopher says, yeah, Omicron has symptoms, but it's spreading fast, that it's actually overwhelming hospitals. Now, I have seen a different report that said because it has so many fewer symptoms and so many people going to hospitalizations, and they have other treatments now that when you first get it can help keep you out of it, and that kind of thing, that most hospitals are not overwhelmed. And in fact, I saw one crazy report that said these hospitals are reporting being overwhelmed, and a film crew got into the hospital and showed empty bed after empty bed. And so you don't necessarily know what's going on with the news, and it is a supply and demand issue, and it is easy to understand how hospitals can become overwhelmed. But let's all keep our fingers crossed that we're in the last gasp of this thing. And yes, it depends on the state that you're in. It depends on the hospital, and I'm sure some hospitals are much more closer to capacity than others. But in general, with a 75% lower rate of hospitalization, that's certainly a gift for all of us. So that's good. And Christopher makes the very good point that empty beds in the ICU are different than wards of a hospital. And yes, film crews don't get into that. But I also heard a doctor talking about the business aspects of hospitals. That they have ICUs that are planned to be at about 60-70% utilization, pandemic or not. They're not built for pandemic levels. So lots of interesting stuff going on in the news, and that's why I don't think we have a clear picture. We see snippets, and we see snippets far more brilliantly than we ever did before. We don't just hear some news person reading a bit of news about hospitalizations or whatever. We see film, video, live video, people in the hospital and people everywhere and all that kind of stuff. And then I know there was one particular clip of film that NBC continued to show for quite some time that had showed this hospital ward And I said, "Oh, gee, that's terrible." And I'd seen the same clip several times, looked at it when watching the news, and it turned out that that was a clip from a hospital in Italy that had been taken 6 months earlier. And so, you have to be careful to understand, to have the discernment that what I'm looking at may not it may be creating a false impression. And so we've all, I hope, become a little, uh, uh, sharper, uh, on that. And of course, if you know somebody that's directly involved in that, you do have a pipeline into that. Um, so with that, just recapping the 5 things to pay attention to, the 5 things that will put money in your pocket in the next year and beyond, in my mind, for the next decade, is the company side of the Great Resignation, serving those employers that are now going to be turning to freelancers, looking at the freelancer side of the Great Resignation, and helping all those uh, uh, freelancers, build their businesses, and agree. And let's see, Christopher's helping me out here. Good, good. All right. The freelancer side of the Great Resignation, the this issue of hiring high power talent. You can go out to get somebody to do the job you need to do, and if you're a freelancer, this is going to be you, the things that you know uniquely how to do, and employ you to make you uh, uh, the person that they rely on in that particular situation. And then millions more people understanding that working remotely is productive. And this is where you're going to be, this creates a much bigger market, a much bigger audience of people that say, we could use a freelancer to do that. And so that's very cool. And the 5th thing is the office is dead, and that's where you're going to see the daylight by operating on that assumption. The office is dead. Where is the opportunity? Don't think I'm going to go back into the office. I'm going to get my if you're 50 plus, if you're thinking you're going to get your resume dusted off and go back into an office job, you're dreaming. That's not happening. The unsaid thing is there's tremendous age discrimination in the world, the business world as we know it. And they're never going to tell you you're a little bit too gray or a little bit too bald or, but they're not going to hire you because their insurance, you're a bigger load on their insurance. Typically, they think you don't have good thinking skills. They think you don't understand how to use a computer. All these things that come up that we know are not true for many of us, and something we ought to pay attention to. And yes, working remotely is productive, and the office is dead or needs CPR. And if you're a freelancer, you want to be uh, out there talking to the people who get that the office is dead, at least for a while. And Christopher's mentioning that he found tremendous age discrimination at age 60. And yes, as I went through that, saw the same thing, just lots of age discrimination. And it does start at 50. I mean, it was pretty pronounced. And there you go. And it's especially in the larger organizations where HR people don't know much about you other than you are a certain age. I mean, that's the thing they have the best fix on. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for your participation today, and especially Marianne and Christopher. Lots of good insight, and look at Christopher. I mean, training as a chiropractor, but now has his own digital agency working from home. This is cool. And Marianne, thanks for your kind words, and we look forward to seeing you on our Tuesday night call if you're one of our members next week, and if not, see you next Friday. have a great week freelancing and enjoy your weekend. Take care.